Hi everyone, in this video I'm going to go over an analogy for compactness because I was looking back at my compactness videos and I thought my analogy was not that great, and so I came up with this one. So our setup here for our analogy is we're going to look at the trajectory of a water bear on a road. So water bear is pictured here. It's this tiny little creature. It's about 1 millimeter across. It's super small. And we're just going to watch it walk along this road. And just to make sure he complies, we're going to build infinitely high walls. Okay, he can't get outside this specific section of the road, so he's in a little box. And infinitely high walls, and they electrocute him whenever he steps on them. So he's definitely staying on this road. Okay, and water bears, if you don't know, are extremely resilient creatures. So much to the point where scientists have legitimately, biologists have legitimately questioned whether they're immortal or not. So they've tested how to kill these things, and they've literally shot it out of a cannon, like a super high pressure cannon. They eventually were able to kill one, but the pressure was very, very high. They're very resilient to cold and heat. So for all intents and purposes, we're going to assume this water bear is immortal. Okay, he's going to walk around this road literally forever. Okay, and we want to observe him. So we've put a bunch of cameras, super small cameras, along this road. And whenever the camera sees the water bear, it starts taking video. Otherwise, it says, okay, I'm not taking video. I don't see the water bear. And just to make sure, we only have one and only one camera is on at any given time that knows where the water bear is. So we're just going to say, okay, it sees the water bear. It sees the whole water bear at the start. It starts here, sees the whole water bear. And then only when it can't see any part of the water bear anymore does it stop taking video. So let's say that most of the water bear is now in this other section. Oh, sorry. These lines are the field of vision of the camera. So most of it is in its original section, or is in this new section, but like its little legs are still in here. That means that this camera is on, this camera is on, this is off still. But then as soon as the entire water bear gets inside here, this one is on and this one is off. So just as a rule of thumb, so that we don't have to worry about the interfaces of their fields of vision. So anyways, water bear is gonna walk. And our question is, does any camera see the water bear for an infinite amount of time? I claim that the answer is yes. Okay, so pause the video here and think about it a bit if you're curious. And when you come back, I'll explain why there is at least one camera that sees him forever. So let's suppose by contradiction that all of them only see the water bear for a finite amount of time. Well, then that means that if you add up all the finite amount of time of each of those, that's still a finite number. That means the water bear was on the road for only a finite amount of time, which contradicts our assumption that our setup that this water bear remains on the road for an infinite amount of time. So, therefore, we must have at least one camera that takes an infinite amount of video, okay? And on that video, we take timestamps, okay? So, with those timestamps, I claim that we have a convergent subsequence. So compactness is all about convergent subsequences. So here, let's say, for example, that the water bear is like, man, I'm stuck in here forever. Forget it. I'm just going to literally just walk back and forth uniformly for all time. Okay, that sequence, his position does not converge, right? It bounces back and forth infinitely many times. However, let's say we're looking at this camera. This camera will see it infinitely many times, and it timestamps its global time that it's seeing it on each frame. And let's say it takes 16 frames per second, so it's just like a normal camera. Then we can take those timestamps, and we see that the water bear is inside this region on all those timestamps. And so it converges within this region. So, and that will give us our convergent subsequence. Position of water bear at time stamp n. Okay? So we have this sequence. We have its starting position at timestamp 1, timestamp 2, and so on for an infinite amount of time. And let's say that timestamp. Let's call it timestamp n time tn. Video from camera 2. Well, so I'm just calling that camera 2 because I've drawn the water bear here, and that's camera 2. So let's say that is the place where we have infinite tape. Then we have that at the start, the second frame, the third frame. Okay, but then we also have, so by the third frame, he's a very fast moving tardigrade, or tardigrade's another word for water bear. He gets outside of it, and then he spends a lot of time walking around. He doesn't get back inside the field of vision until timestamp 1,000,001, and then he steps right back out, and then he doesn't come back for a really long time, timestamp 10 to the 10th plus 5 or something, and so on. So, I'm going to label a new sequence. Y0 is X0. Y1 is X1. Y2 is X2. But now, Y3 is X1,000,001. Y4 is X 10 to the 10th plus 5. Y5 equals, and so on. And the point is, because I have an infinite tape roll here, video roll of the water bear, I have an infinite sequence. I have an infinite sequence that's confined in this tiny, tiny region. So we're talking about like electron microscopes here, like super, super small, tiny, tiny region. Certainly less than a millimeter here, because we can fit a water bear inside that region. So we know that it is within some super, super fine margin, its position here. And so we say, well, that's converged. So the only real breakdown of this analogy is that we don't have infinite precision. So on the real line, you have infinite precision. You can always get closer and closer and closer, and that's why I chose the water bear here, because he's tiny, super small, right? But we have that the limit as n goes to infinity of yn is some y here, up to our experimental precision for the analogy, okay? So just in case that part is bothering you, it's an analogy, so we don't have, full precision, but tardigrades are really freaking small, so hopefully that doesn't bother you too much. On the real line, you can imagine now, rather than the camera being electron microscope level, it's literally infinitesimal, so that we can essentially do this same analogy with the sequences, but on a a literally infinitesimal scale. And that is the main thing. So compactness is for every sequence xn, there is a subsequence xnj equals yj. So that's our relabeling here. That's what it looks like. We can pick a nj and we relabel according to j, such that yj, so the sequence here, n equals 1 to infinity, converges. That is what compactness on the real line is, and that is exactly what we've done in this analogy, up to experimental precision, because we're dealing with the real world here. But the real line has infinitesimal cameras. You can think about it like that. Thank you guys for watching.